as funk. Thoughts deep, boys steeped in the depths that he sunk. Big stress, depressed in the middle of fall. Sky gray, I late in the thick of it all. I wonder, how long can a human survive just staying alive or carrying the rest of the tribe? Waiting for the day to arrive or struggling dies, and I be doing way, way more than getting by. So why? Cop myself a cup of coffee, sipping water in it softly, cleansing me of stress I hold. Hey, cop myself a cup of coffee, sipping water in it softly, cleansing me of stress I hold. Realize life is so much more than just living a day. Every day I can sit and reflect and breathe and connect to myself and know that I've been given. See, giving up is not an option. So when I'm looking at gray skies, I'll be adopting a new way to deal with a test. Lord, relieve me of stress. The rain be looking like when blessings dropping. And so I cop myself a cup of coffee, sipping water in it softly, cleansing me of stress I hold. Water in it softly, cleansing me of stress I hold. Hey, here we go. Yeah, let's do this. Y'all ready? 1, 2, 3. In times of test, let no harm beset me, oh my Lord, oh my Lord.
Good evening, Eric. Who the hell's this guy over here? I don't know. That guy? It wasn't supposed to be that scene, but I've screwed up again, folks. So it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's okay.
It really doesn't matter. It really doesn't
What's
matter.
nice, Brian, is you are consistent with your screwing up. And that's all we ask.
All right. So at least you know that I'm consistent. So anyway, let's just do this for a second here. This is Divided We Stand on YouTube and on Facebook. We have a group page called the Divided We Stand Facebook group page. So if you're unfamiliar with that, please work your way over there and maybe you'll become a member of our very popular group. Not so popular as our YouTube page, but it grows slowly. And we have about 500,000 of members and such. So we ask that you subscribe if you think about it. And remember, this is not a monetized channel, and it is not a monetized Facebook group page. We're not asking for anything, which means that when you watch that YouTube video, you won't be seeing advertisements, and that's always a nice thing. Yes, indeed. So please consider that. We're not looking for anything from you. No money, no nothing. We're just commiserating. Okay, so that's that. Let's put Dave back on now.
Hey!
We have a special show. Not the fact that Dave's on, although I'm sure Dave might go against.
It's
what I'm
always
saying there,
special, yes.
But Dave is in Juneau, Alaska right now, which is interesting, and he says it's cold as hell.
May I say something about cold? Let me just say this. It's cold as hell.
Right,
now.
but you're in Juneau, which is really pretty far south in Alaska.
Yeah, I
must be
can't
even
wait
cold
as we
if you
move
go
up.
up to like Fairbanks
Yeah.
or
Well,
Barrow.
It's yeah. Just a little bit about it. Of course, I'm not here to sightsee. We've been fortunate. We've been in Alaska before. I'm working on the book and another podcast that I'm working on about music cruising. So the nice thing is I do not have to get off the ship. But even as you're walking on the passageways, if you get near a door, you could tell. And they had predicted rain the whole time we were here, which again I don't really care. You can't control nature, but it is not raining currently, but it is misty. And I always think of that line I always like Dire Straits. There's a line in Brothers in Arms, and the mist-covered mountains. And that's what I'm looking at. When I turn this way, I'm looking at mist-covered mountains, which is, you don't see too many mountains in Washington, D.C. You see monuments, but you don't see mountains. So it's always interesting to be somewhere. And I think I'm going to deviate a little bit because I am here. If you're okay with that, Brian, we usually
Sure.
do the top three and that kind of thing. But I think what's so interesting about travel. This is the second time I've traveled since Trump has returned, and it's really interesting. There's a feeling that everybody kind of talks about it, but they go about it very cautiously, right?
Right.
Because you never know. The person sitting next to you may be Donald Trump's biggest fan, or if you are Donald Trump's biggest fan, maybe one of the people that Donald Trump considers to be a demon Democrat, and you're not really here to discuss politics, right? You're either here for one of two reasons. You're here to hear music, really, pretty interesting music. For anybody who knows anything, it's a '60s pop concert. So the headliners are Brian Hyland, who did "Sealed with a Kiss," and my favorite, "Itsy Bitsy Teeny Weeny Yellow Polka Dot Bikini."
Horrible song.
I know, but it
Just
was my
horrible.
introduction. It was my introduction to sex. So I was 8 years old when I heard it, and it fascinated me. And I've been fixated on bikinis
I don't know
ever
how
since.
that kind of connects there, but I
Well, bikinis, that was the thing. Now, Ron Dante, who actually, you say, "Ew, he was the voice of Sugar Sugar." In 1 year, he had two number ones, and nobody knew because they never revealed at that time. He produced 9 albums for Barry Manilow, and since 2010 is raking in the cash because he was the producer of Ain't Misbehavin', which has been on Broadway that long.
so he
So,
gets royalties.
and yeah, it's his thing. He gets every dollar that goes in, he gets some of it. And then I was telling him, and he does in his act, he does some song snippets, he calls them, that you will know.
Right.
He was the voice of I'd Like to Teach the World to Sing. He was the voice of McDonald's. He did jingles. And every time they are performed, you get. So I volunteered. I was talking to him. I said, I'll just sit around and count your money now. It's pennies on the dollar, but mounts up.
I wonder if he
Then
did
we
the
have
jingle to Ideal in Hamilton, New Jersey.
yeah,
If
there
you've
you
got a
are.
passion for fashion.
Chris Montez, who I've always liked.
Right.
He had the song "Let's Dance" way back when, and he was kind of the heir apparent once Richie Valens was killed. He kind of became that Hispanic, Latino, West Coast North. And then one of my favorite groups of all time, the Box Tops, and who, of course, their big hit was "The Letter," and they're just really good guys. And then you have the Buckinghams, whom a lot of people like. So what it is for these music cruises, it's more interesting to be with the fans and backstage and all that kind of stuff, which I get to do. But we talk about it. It's really the closest thing, Bri, you could get to a time machine. And I love to watch the fans' faces when they hear "Itsy Bitsy Teeny Weeny Yellow."
By the way,
or
Dave, speaking of jingles, can I just put this from one side? I want to see, do you remember this?
It's
Go
not
ahead.
a fancy salon. It's nothing but a Quonset hut. But If you've got a passion for fashion,
Good swing tune.
and you've got a craving for saving,
Gotta remember this.
take
Oh, yeah.
the wheel of your automobile,
Of an automobile.
and swing on down
Going
to
down
Ideal.
to Ideal. And, well, there you are, okay?
Right.
You're actually swinging beat.
That's a swing beat. Yeah, that's definitely a swing beat.
But what happens is, and you and I talk about this all the time, and sometimes they turn off the music and sometimes they let it run. And I guess you're letting it run.
If you've got a passion
Right.
for fashion,
Yeah. But what happens is we laugh about that, but we are now completely controlled by pop culture, whether we want to admit it or not. Our president is not president without pop culture. Pop culture reflects a pro-Trump and anti-Trump stance. So, these things, I can start to say, but with the music of our youth, it's a time machine. And when people hear this, and I've never, even though I was a musician from 1966 to 2007. I mean, I love playing and that kind of stuff, but these people, and I mean, it's really cool. The music is central to their lives. And so,
Well, it
it
does
takes them
create
back.
dopamine. I mean, that's one of the things.
Oh,
I mean, when you get into music,
absolutely.
it brings you into your past or your future, where you want. I mean, we all know if you were an
Have you
athlete,
ever,
you would just dream of hitting the home run, the
we
World
don't,
Series
I mean,
with the music.
Yeah, what I found, I mean, I think with myself, and I think it's true. There's only two kinds of songs, if you're going back, not going forward. Those that you remember and have a memory from, or those you've never heard. I mean, every song is, you can't escape it. We were talking about, ooh, that's a terrible song, Itsy Bitsy Teeny Weeny Polka Dot Bikini.
can't
I
stand
feel
it.
that Sugar Sugar by the Archies is one of the worst songs of all time.
Right, but it
But
was
two
it was
things.
a bubblegum tune that was kind of catchy in its
And,
own way.
and it was a number one. I mean, it was
It's that
the
one
biggest
part
thing
of the
going.
line that says, like, I want to be your candy girl, that kind of thing. Like, this
Yeah.
kind of good way to.
But again, music, like our lives, goes through waves. I mean, at the same time that you're having the birth of Led Zeppelin. I mean, if people think about this, you're having Led Zeppelin formed out of the British band the Yardbirds. They become the Led Zeppelin in 1969, and of course go on to do whatever. That's one group in England. Another group in England that we kind of learn about later is forming at that point by the name of Black Sabbath. But at the same time, the number one song in the country is Sugar Sugar
Sugar, Sugar.
by the
Which goes
Archies.
to show you about
So,
the pop culture, how, there's a difference between what we think is going to be popular and what actually is popular. You had the AM stuff was still popular at that time.
right.
And, and,
And,
and, and that's just shows you that mainstream America goes for that kind of sound. And you have to account for females, which is why Genesis, after as soon as they put out Follow You, Follow Me, they went from this art rock group to all of a sudden
Right.
they're moving toward rhythm and blues.
which music is inclusive, but it also can be divisive. Um, you know, and we were talking about that a lot too, and it still applies to today. So, when I was growing up, born in 1952, no one that I knew of, none of us listened to the same music as our parents. It just didn't happen. The parents were
But
still
you
music
don't
of
like.
the night.
Hold on, can we stop? I'm going to stop. Put a stop on that
Sure,
one because
sure,
I mean, I was into Led Zeppelin. I mean, all the rock things, and you were
right.
10 years before, but you still appreciate. And by the way, they were from your age group. In fact, a little bit older than you in
Oh yeah,
reality. But in those days, I mean, I could kind of get when my dad put on like the swing, swing, swing from like Benny Goodman. There
what you
was an
just had on, we knew,
intensity, and
yeah,
I saw my father and his friends partying, and it was cranked. So it wasn't too much unlike us, even though we may not have liked it. But you notice like young people who are into jazz, they do dig that stuff. Like they'll listen to
well,
Coltrane
that's
and Miles
the
Davis.
only thing. The only thing that I would say, what, like I said, was completely different. Okay, my father, for example, said there's only two kinds of music worth listening to. One is called country and is Western, and sometimes you can put them together. My mother was into show tunes and religious music. She
Oh,
was
don't
an
forget there's
organist.
country swing there too, which is kind of a cool.
Well, that's all of that stuff's in there, right? Bob Wills and those guys. But my point is, so then comes along this thing, rock, which is first is black music, and that created quite a problem because that the South had they literally did they had lines if we on dividing a hall in two or dividing the auditorium where black people could sit and black people could dance in the same, and then the kids just started crossing over. Interesting, literally and figuratively. But then with my generation, almost all of our children grew up listening to our music. And so what that means, I don't know exactly. Historians will have to look back on that. But I know that was a cultural shift. Now, how does that apply to today? Well, we're now carrying that idea of that's my dad's music or that's my mom's music or that's something else. And we're doing that with Americans. They're the others. They're the others. Now, we've talked ad infinitum on this show about this show, which you named brilliantly, I think, Divided We Stand. And at the time, there were people, and I'm sure you got some of that reaction. Oh, no, we're
Didn't
not
like that.
divided.
They did not like that
Well,
because this whole
a couple
idea of
things.
united.
Number one,
we stand.
yeah, the number one, they said we're not that divided. The others, you shouldn't say that.
Yeah, it
Well,
was sacrilegious to say it.
well, let's be honest. When we do talk here on the ship politics, and remember, the majority of the people on this ship in the music part, are between the ages probably of 60 and 80. Okay, a couple 80s, but 60 in the 70s, let's say. And almost all of us universally agree that as bad as it was in 1968, which is kind of the maybe the worst year, and then from 1968 through to Watergate to 74. So in my lifetime, 68 to 74 was just horrible for the most part for America. And that almost looks, I almost long for those days now with where we are. Certainly last week, everybody, it was so hard. And it's like, okay, you had maybe that we know of 20 or 25 horrible things happen. Now, of course, everybody focuses on the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And it was an assassination. There's no question about that. But he's being treated as a great American hero, and he should not be treated as a great American hero. You can hold two things if you have any modicum of humanity in you. You can feel bad for his family, for his kids. You can say nobody deserves to be assassinated, and at the same time hold that Charlie Kirk was a motherfucking menace to the United States of America, which he was, okay? But so many of, I think, the MAGA people, it's like a light switch. They have nothing in between, bro. It's either good or bad, and there's nothing.
It's a
you can't
binary
hold-
world to them, essentially.
You got it exactly. That's perfect, bro. Maybe we should call it binary. We stand. I don't know.
And they don't like that word, but it's essentially
Well,
what's happening.
no. But and then we're at such a factor now where everything comes. I don't know how much, I mean, obviously I follow and you follow. I follow maybe a little bit more because I live in Washington, D.C., but you're on top of things too. On the bullet was TRN something. And I don't know if you saw that was they actually said, well, that's short for trans, and he was a trans, and no, that was the name of the company that produced the bullet. Okay, It has nothing to do. But we're so quick, and I'm going to ask everybody that listens to this show that hears it live tonight to do one thing, and I think you can help America this way, and I have to do it too. Please, 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 don't post anything about anything till you're sure that it's true.
And that's hard to determine. Uh-oh, I think we're having a little bit of lag here. Dave, please get your credit card out, and you can tell the people on the ship there that you'll be willing to pay for an upgraded Wi-Fi for a small
No.
fee of $500.
Nope. I like being buffered like this.
Okay.
This is real. This is real.
All right.
So what happens is, In journalism, which still exists, albeit not as good, there was an unsolvable, unanswerable question. You had to be two things that are mutually exclusive most of the times. You wanted to and had to be first, and you wanted and had to be correct. And almost every story that I ever covered that involved any kind of police work, the initial reports never proved to be, accurate. You need time.
Tea time, right?
And so we talk about, we're in this pace that's killing us, and there's some truth to that. But it's also like everybody has to rush out and have their say. And do you know what, Brian? Every word that's ever come out of my mouth, everything that I've ever written, which apply it really in the long run doesn't matter to the universe. It really doesn't.
No.
And we're here for such a short amount of time. And uh, but right now we live. It's the world that we live in, and people want to comment, and they want to have and I understand that.
Well, I'm going to stop you again right there, Dave. You mentioned
Sure.
we live here. I know we take this for granted, what Dave just said. We live here for such a short period of time, but people don't understand the concept of time in terms of how it relates to the universe. We know the universe is just ungodly old. It's like, at the very least, 13.8 billion years. The planet
Right.
itself here, maybe 4.5 billion, maybe a little more, who knows? And we're here for this. So it really is an insignificant amount of time.
Oh,
that we're
absolutely.
here. It's so insignificant. And you can't, now, it may be that 13.8 billion years is not a lot, but relative to us, it is. Just like, for example, we
Correct.
see the universe as this tremendously huge area of space, but in reality, it might not be that big, but we may be incredibly small. And that's something we should account for. So our time could be incredibly short. And, again,
But
it's all relativity.
But I'm going to add something. A lot of times, one of the great questions of life from the day we emerged, if we emerged from the sea or the cave or, wherever we emerged from, these questions come up. Why am I here? Why now? What is my purpose? What is my meaning of life? And I don't know that there is, and this will come back to politics in a moment. I don't know that there is a meaning of life. I don't know. It's not really important. It's be good to one another. It's realizing that we are social. We cannot survive alone.
Right.
And so just be kind. It sounds new age or no. Just be kind, be compassionate, be helpful.
Because
But
you would
there comes a
expect
time.
that you want people to be kind to you. So
It's
we
it,
all have to
look,
assume that we're the same person.
unfortunately, every time something gets in the Bible, one of two things happen. It either gets misinterpreted, or people who don't believe in the Bible
Or is it
dismiss it.
deserving of interpretation?
True, I'm not saying, but if you really wanted to come down to one rule for the meaning of life and the meaning of your life, and I said, I don't think there's a meaning of life for everybody. There's a meaning for your life. The golden rule would not be bad. Do unto others, would have done unto you. But you can even shorten that to RESPECT. Aretha added that. Just show respect. Show respect for the
Or
planet.
do
Show
no
respect
harm? That's number.
and do no harm. Another
Right.
good one. Now, so let's take that one for a moment. Do no harm. Now let's look at Charlie Kirk. Did Charlie Kirk do harm? He did immeasurable harm. It will be reflected for if decades probably. Having said that, should he have been assassinated?
No.
No, because you should use words and ballots and that type of thing to make change, not bullets. It's just that simple. Because bullets, when they take a human life, are bad in the sense if it's an assassination. Now, then we'll get into, well, what about if somebody's breaking into your house and they're gonna kill you? Kill them. I mean, I really don't have a problem. If I or someone I love is threatened, and the only way that I see to end that threat, you have to take their life, then you have to do it. But you have to live with the consequences.
By the way, I
whatever
was
they are.
ready to kill for my dogs. That's how intense I was with that kind of thing. I would do that
Well, I can understand that. I can understand that.
effectively.
But am I willing to kill? Am I willing to kill somebody who has a different political ideology than myself? I don't. And a group of us again playing that mind experiment game. We like, would you take Donald Trump's life if you had the chance? Now, the number one candidate used to be Hitler. Would you take Hitler out if you had a chance? And I always said no to that because my fear or my concern would be history unfolded and it was pretty damn bad. But maybe it would have unfolded worse. We don't know. Or maybe
Right, I mean, there was a win in
ultimately-
the end with that. I mean, Germany learned to behave. Japan learned to behave. I mean, look, the price is, it's always bad. It's always, I mean, and you know what? It's probably not, I mean, I know we can play these games, the what if history had turned
Right.
out this way, but because of the nature of human beings, it just all leads to, quite frankly, all leads to shit anyway. We just have to, it's like with Camus, you have to make the best of an absurd situation.
Right.
And not even
and so-
try to figure out, it's like the Sisyphus, like he said, it's, the myth of Sisyphus is, in a sense, we can't look at Sisyphus as doing something stupid. He has realized that he's got a task. At least he has his own job. And in his own job, he distracts himself from the existential thought that he's going to die. And that's
Right.
what saves him. And then that's probably what saves us, is that we know we're going to die. And that is the existential dread. But when we keep ourselves busy and not even think about what's the meaning of life, you just do life. And that's probably the best thing.
And I would not disagree with you on that because you're doing something. But I think what happens right now is people are doing the wrong things. Now, someone could say to me, and who are you to judge what is wrong? Again, very simply, I'll do the do no harm. I can live with that. Right. So if you're harming someone, something, what you're doing is wrong. I'm not judging you. Right. The simple reason is judging you. It's not even justice. It's just reason. And we do have the ability to reason. We don't always use it. So under that definition, I think you could say that Donald Trump is harmful. So then moving up that thought experiment, would you take out Donald Trump? And we were talking about that. And I said, not as a child. I mean, I just couldn't. But today, I would still not do it. But I
You wouldn't do it
certainly
because you
ponder
have
it
a
more.
certain moral code. But that does come up. It does make me think about the thought experiment, Dave, in philosophy. Like if you, because it was in terms of what you should or shouldn't do is based on math. So, for example, if somebody was going to be on a train track and you had the ability to save them, save 4 other people by letting an innocent one die, would you do it? And most people would say, okay, well, I guess because now I've limited the death, I would throw the innocent person there. And that brings up the Dostoevsky situation where if someone said to you, Dave, okay, look, we can have a wonderful planet. Everything is going to be beautiful. We're going to live forever. There's no need for God. But the price of it is one child, one baby has to be tortured in a box for an infinite number of, an eternal amount of time. Would you accept that? And the thought becomes an emotional thing because now, okay, so 8 billion people are going to live well and in ecstasy and one person, but you're the one who has to make the decision to do it. And you don't want to make it because it's going to be on your mind for that
Correct.
amount of time. Right.
And I know,
and then the math doesn't matter.
I know this simplifies it too much, but I could honestly say I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't harm the child because, in my view, and it's just my view, I am doing harm directly to that child by choosing it to be
right.
tortured.
Right. You are directly responsible.
And then somebody would turn around. Well, you're choosing to harm the no. The others have to fend for them. It's like you
have to be fair to everybody, and that includes
that's
the
where
child in the
Trump-
box.
Correct. And that's where Trump misses as a human being. I believe this to be true. And okay. Charlie Kirk had a motto. Do you know what his motto was when he went out to speak?
By the way, I'm sorry, Dave, I'm trying to find these here they are. I didn't realize it, folks. I know you had a lot of comments here, but I didn't have
Okay.
it
Yeah, I haven't
separate.
seen them either. So
hi, T-Bone, and T-Bone saying hello to you, Dave.
run through them. Run through them. Just run
Zepp
through
one of
them.
the best. So T-Bone loves Zepp. Here we go. We got Anthony from Texas. Good to see you. We got Bella here, Lugrisi.
Right.
We've got Anthony. He would not take out Donald Trump. Internal damnation is a myth. I don't believe in hell. Okay, you can get to heaven with a box kicker. Osama, number 5. Okay, I think we're caught up now. I'll leave that one last one
Right.
from Anthony. Okay.
Well,
Sorry,
yeah,
folks.
so
My mistake.
oh no, that was that. So we're back with this idea. I think if it begins, the badness, we'll just call it bad first, begins. Trump is the only person, as I say, that I've ever run across who has not one redeeming human characteristic. Now, I ask you about the idea of what was Charlie Kirk's thing. Here's what he ran under. His banner was "Prove Me Wrong." So I would entertain anybody to prove me wrong. All you have to do to prove me wrong is show one redeeming characteristic that Trump has. But badness, we're not an evil yet. Badness is when he said "prove me wrong," he didn't want to be proved wrong. Charlie Kirk believed that he was right.
Right, but don't
And the
forget,
other
he
side-
seemed to have a script, Dave. Like, he was very interesting in the way he would get in a dialogue with somebody or discourse. He would simply, I mean, when somebody would address him and answer back with a question, he would avoid it and then he would do his script. It was almost as if he had a planned script that always kind of worked. It fit the groove of the record. And that's what bothered me about him. He was prepared, but he couldn't address what somebody else was saying. He would just continue what he's saying and keep forcing that person to come back to his pool.
And what I really felt this about Charlie Kirk, was Charlie felt he had the answers. And he came across not quite as smug as some of the others, but still smug. But he hid behind this idea that, hey, look, I'm out there. I'm listening to you. He wasn't listening to those people, whether he had a script or not. He believed he had the answers. And if you look at it again, behind all badness and evil, there's some money. I thought it was interesting that his net worth over a period of time went from about $21,000 to multi-million. So certainly, but people liked him. He also was able to, and this is where Hitler, Trump, all the bad guys, they're able to grab people who are hurt or hurting or believed that they're hurting or believe that they're less than together. And there is a whole almost generation of young white men, ages, I don't know, 14 now to maybe 30, somewhere in there, who feel somehow that they've gotten cheated out of something that's theirs. And a lot of that has to do with economics. A lot of that has to do with fear. My take, and I'd love anybody on the show to comment or anyone else to comment on this. Looking at that, I think MAGA supporters have a couple things going on as a group. One is that they long for a past that either wasn't there or if it was, shouldn't have been there. Either one, right? When you say make America great, for women, wasn't great. Again, well, first of all, the again part implies that it once was great. Doesn't say make it great, for
Right. As
this
soon
or
as
that.
you say again, it means a repetition of something that previously occurred.
Yeah, that's what. So I always ask, and what year was that? Let's see. We had slavery.
Yeah, you choose
until,
a year and we'll figure out if there's any good.
Yeah,
Really.
and then we had Jim Crow,
For whom?
and then we turned to Japanese, and then we considered gay to be a disease, and then we had 40% of African American males in prison, and then we had this, and then we had that. And the answer is America's ideals are great. You kind of touched on it earlier about humanity. We have a hard time achieving ideals. We just do. There are people, and I kind of subscribe to this, that we are still paying that we never really solved the problems of the past. In other words, we've never really resolved slavery, which led to racism. We've never completely resolved the idea of inequality of sexes. Now, a couple things are going on simultaneously with that. One of the things America could do, and now we are going to go to its past, is if you didn't fit in, you could go west. I mean, think about that, right? There was no anything, any white men, west of Philadelphia, the main line at one point in American history. And every time you'd see that, the Mormons, didn't fit in, they go west. The prospectors, the rugged cowboys, but we're out of space now. I mean, I was at Seattle. There's nowhere to go except the Pacific Ocean.
But
I
this is a
mean, you're
good
there.
comment from Anthony, because I remember again in the '80s when
Yes.
it came out, they did want to blame the gay population, and then when it started hitting the heterosexual population, then we had obviously Magic Johnson
Right. And
coming clean with that.
yes.
Then people realized, like now you can't use that anymore.
Well, Anthony was really onto something there, current. Did you notice the reaction? Speaking of how when it becomes something else or becomes closer to us or whatever, when it appeared that the killer of Charlie Kirk was maybe a Democrat, maybe a lefty, something else. Oh, burn that kid. But
Right.
then when it's found out he could be just a disgruntled.
And he was a Trump voter in what, 16 or something.
Yeah, yeah.
He's a Republican, and then he went back.
And so we had, and now suddenly then it's what, well, I loved what one female politician who I won't name said, burn him, kill him. And then as soon as she found out, well, Charlie Kirk was a Christian and he'd want his killer forgiven. They can just turn on a dime. They're amazing. But anyway, back to just a little bit about.
Well, that's a
I was saying
good point,
before, so-
actually. I mean,
Yeah.
it
So-
tells you a
so
lot
what-
about the psychology.
It
of
does.
people.
Well, it tells you a lot about the MAGA thing. But the other thing is, like I said, so I'm gonna challenge MAGA on its past. I think MAGA is terrified of the future. Look, unless something horrible, almost up to the end of the earth, America is going to be a non-white country by 2050, if not earlier. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to be a black country or a red country or a
Be a
yellow
water
country
country
or
in a
brown,
while.
brown
Have
country.
all the
It
coast
just means
underwater.
it won't, the white, Caucasian, males and females will not be dominant. And I think that is another concern. And then what happens when you have those two concerns, you tend to want to go back to a past, you can't do it, so that makes you angry. You're scared of the future, so you begin to act out. So I think that's part of the problem with young white men. I think we've got, and it's hard. Look, it's hard to live a moral life. Would you agree with that, Brian? I mean, I do think it's hard to live a moral life, just because.
Because human beings are emotional need machines. They need the
Right.
satisfaction, and you get to the psychology of it. We keep going back to psychology. They need that dopamine fix. We all do. And that will influence what we do and how we do it. You know what I mean? So
And
it's
there-
very
there
hard
are-
to be ethical all the way through moral.
It is.
They have
And-
mores,
and I-
but that's about it,
Yeah, heels. And the other thing, well, one of the things along those lines is, again, I kind of think that, what should I say? One of the problems of MAGA, as I said, is kind of light switch off on. Well, let's take the basic human need for sex, okay? And sex has messed up many, many, many a relationship and whatever goes on.
Because the
But
drive
let's
is so
just-
strong, and that's
Well,
very, very
let's
difficult
do.
to handle.
But what happens is, it's I keep saying, and I keep doing this, I keep saying it's not only what you do, it's how you do it and why you do it that has
Right.
to be factored in. It has to be factored in. So, let's take, which we know that Donald Trump, we know this for a fact, Donald Trump had sex with Stormy Daniels, who at the time was a porn star. And at that same time, his current wife was delivering his youngest child. We know that. That is fact. Now, people could be horrified by that, or that's wrong, or whatever. But that's between really Donald Trump and
Right, that is his
Stormy Daniels
business until
and Melania to
he
work
says
out.
something
That's now
conflicts with that.
when Donald Trump moves to the point that he orders his bagman at the time, Michael Cohen, to deliver money to Stormy Daniels, that moves into a whole different realm because that's not about the sex. That's
It's about the
about the
cover-up.
cover up.
Right.
Right. So we have that. Well, let's move to this. If, and again, it's a huge if, but if Donald Trump had sex with underage young girls, if it was consensual, it's still considered rape on the age, right?
Right.
If it was sex trafficking, it's more hard, and if it was just outright rape, it's even more horrifying. Okay,
Right.
but it's certainly easy to imagine that Donald Trump would do that because he is that type of person. Listen very carefully, MAGA people. I'm not saying he did it. I'm saying it's easy. It should be easy for us to believe, given who Donald Trump is, given what he has done and what we know, it may be easy. Then they come back, well, with the Bill Clinton thing. Okay, let's look at that for a moment. Some of them are saying, well, Bill Clinton did it. Well, I will say this. If Bill Clinton did it, he deserves to be in prison.
I
No
want to just
question.
shut this one down here. I would not believe that at all. So let's not.
Oh, no, no,
I
no,
wouldn't
no,
go there,
no.
Anthony. I wouldn't go
No,
there.
no,
I'm
no.
gonna put that out.
What, there's a lot of reports. The big one is in Washington, D.C., because sex is, oh man, I mean, it is our biggest human drive. And of course, sex and power together.
Oh, by
have always been
far, aside from the will to survive, it is by far the strongest drive.
Yeah.
We have varying degrees,
and
but
what,
it is incredible.
and the joke about Washington, D.C., it's Hollywood for ugly people. But what that's saying is they're powerful people and they can get whatever they want. I mean, pretty much. And they become attractive. To people. I mean, it would be interesting to know if you had an honesty, if everybody, how many women would really want to sleep with the president of the United States? The number would astound you. You know what I mean?
Right, because
if
some people are starstruck. They need to be near somebody who is famous. It's a
Exactly.
vicarious situation.
So when you start throwing that in the mix, you know, then it gets really bad. But Brian, I was thinking too, in between freezing my butt off as I look at now, in here in Alaska, is this okay? We always end, and we'll do it again this week. We've ended the show almost ever since we started. We put it in a little bit later. Do you and then do I feel better, or not say better? Are we more optimistic, less optimistic about America's chances, or about the same as we were the week before? And I'm going to take it a step. I want to take it, and we'll maybe work a little bit on this. I'm not so sure I'm optimistic about America's chances, even if we defeat Donald Trump. And let me put that in two ways. Number one, if we defeat Donald Trump, we still have whatever's left of MAGA to contend with.
Right, and the opposite is just as bad because they can't live without us. The expertise.
And there you go. And there you go. And now, so
that's 71% of our GDP is created by blue states, and they better
correct.
get that real
But
quick.
they don't. That's not going to happen, Brian. They don't think that way. So that's not going to happen. What you're saying is, I'll use a Star Trek kind of thing. What you're saying is Spock, because it's logical and true.
Right.
And how they react.
But they'll
bones.
feel that no matter what. I mean, it's just like they can say that the sun is harmless,
All
but
right,
you're still going to get UV light.
I hear that a lot. You know what they'll do if they fear it? I mean, if they feel it,
They'll
take their
delude
guns
themselves.
out. I'm not saying they're not going to say, "Oh, we were wrong." No, they're going to say you stole from us,
Right.
and they're going to come after us. And that gets to the question of divided we stand. So I'm saying, not only are we politically divided, but if we get, and I understand, and yes, I agree with this.
Isn't it kind of like a neighbor next door you can't get along with? You might as well just don't talk with them for the next
correct
lifetime.
But you can do that with your neighbor, but you can't do that when you're living in a country.
That's part of the problem because you are economically tied in with them.
Correct.
Go to school.
Now,
they have, they're trying to
right.
implement things politically, so it's impossible.
Exactly.
And
then
they understand
the thing
that.
is, and the thing is there with Trump, You take him out, and I believe this to be true. There's no single figure in America who would command the whatever it is that he has. He's a one and done. He can't give it to his son. He can't give it to Eric because he's one of the dumbest human beings on the planet. Donnie Jr.
I think
is
he's
not.
embarrassed by Eric, you know, in terms of how he
Oh,
looks
he's embarrassed. He's
and
embarrassed
how
by
he
Barron, poor kid.
speaks.
I mean, and the only way you get around, I guess, is you just do what his two daughters have done and just disappear out of the picture.
Right.
But even if you get rid of Trump, you still have the MAGA, you still have the Republicans, and I don't know that I necessarily buy that if Trump were gone, they fear Trump. They don't fear Trump. They fear not getting elected. That's all. Done. If they thought tomorrow they would get elected by opposing Donald Trump, they would do it.
But
They're
isn't that true with
politicians.
most politicians? And that's what's so
Absolutely.
obscene is that it's all about their own personal
Well, yes.
aggrandizement.
Yeah. Well, but the other thing is, Brian, I never saw the movie or read the book Fight Club, but I know it's become part of Americana. And what is, the first rule of Fight Club is whatever it is. Well, the first rule of politics is to get elected. If you're not elected, you don't have anything. Even to do good, you have to get elected. So yes, it's a greedy thing, but it's also a practical thing. So I don't know that they would turn. Then on top of all that, you still have what allows Trump to be Trump, what allowed Trump to become Trump. The culture, the pop culture has to change, but you also have the oligarchy. And when it's hard to wrap around these things, but when you know for a fact that income inequality in America today is greater than it was in the Gilded Age, which for those that know, that was the age of the robber barons, and greater than it was at the time of the French Revolution. And there are historians that believe it is the greatest. They know it's the greatest in any democratic or society that wasn't a kingdom or a dictatorship. So you still have to deal with that. So, and then we've said this to anybody listening, Brian. We don't plan this thing out. We just have a talk like we always do.
Well, it's more important that we do it this way because, first of all, it has to be real. We don't follow a script at all, and everybody knows that. But what we do say is based on our experience and our understanding of things, which is not necessarily a very small area of study. We can get somewhat granular with things on here, and I think
Right.
that it's better
if we need to.
that it's because first of all, Dave, people who know David and myself know that we played music together, and the one thing that Dave and I shared in our when we played in a rock group together, we had 4 people in the band. I don't want to keep going into this, but it was kind of divided. We stand in the band. It was David and myself.
Definitely.
And the issue was that David and I were improvisers. We never ever played the same thing twice. Everything was improvised, but we knew within the realm of the chord changes what we had to play over. And the other two were kind of like, okay, we're going to play it this way every single time, and that was impossible. It was untenable. And this is essentially why we do what we do. We were the same type of teacher. We
Exactly.
constantly improvise, and this is what we do. We have to do it this way. But we do
And before-
have an understanding of what we talk about.
But there are times when that can also be detrimental. But I can't be anybody than who I am, and you can't be anybody than who you are.
Right,
So
we have
yes.
to be ourselves.
So that band, we're talking about pop culture and politics. That band that we had 4 members, some would be an interesting study in group dynamics, which does apply to America today. There was no way that the bass player and the drummer could play like Brian and I wanted to or did, and the same was true.
And we weren't even
on our
really
side.
demanding. You and I generally have the same cut. Well, we don't have the same likes in terms of groups, but we had the same idea about how
No,
we should
it's just-
improvise.
It's just, and so what I'm saying is that's almost like where America is right there. And I would ask anyone, my God, anyone who has a plan to bring this country together to get it out there and let's look at it and examine it. Because I'll be honest with you, Brian, I don't see it. I just don't see it. I don't see it. There's been too much pain, too much happening. And last week, historians I don't want to make too much out of one incident, but if there is ever an incident or the 5 incidents that leads us to a civil war, whatever form that takes, I think 2 things obviously be at the top: the election of Donald Trump, of course,
I'm going
and
to stop
the
right there for a second.
assassination.
1 second, Dave. I'm
Yeah,
going to hold that.
sure.
I
Okay.
need to ask this because I'll forget it unless I write it
Okay.
down. But do you think it's more likely we go through a civil war before we have an economic collapse? Which comes first?
Whoa, man, is that a great question? Um,
Because an
I think
economic
that comes.
collapse can
No,
happen pretty
I understand.
quickly.
I think they would happen almost simultaneously, but I think the one that would happen first that would trigger the Civil War would be the economic collapse. In other words, as that starts to fall, you got to get something, right? And as you pointed out very factually, if the blue state, not if, the blue states
Because
do
they are dependent on
71%.
us for the taxes.
What?
We are paying a lot. New Jersey's, for
Well,
every dollar we put
but
in, we're
see,
putting in
I
almost, a
understand that
$1.80 or $2.
if you,
Kentucky's
if,
putting
okay,
in 60 cents. Fuckers.
let's say that every blue state just stop paying federal taxes. Okay, they're just not going to pay them. You're in war because the federal government's going to have to go in and get it. They have to have the money to survive,
Right.
and you're into war.
Because they
Let's
can't
try
just
it
do it
the
on digits because it's going to cost the
let's
inflation. We're
try
done.
let's try it the other way. The red states fail to pay taxes. Who the hell cares? Except they're going to be starving, and and then you'll
Yeah,
get
you
the war.
can't live on
So,
corn pone, can you? I'm
well,
getting kind of crude here,
no, it
but
doesn't work. No, it doesn't work real well.
right.
And you even see it again. I'm using this ship I'm on as a
And by the way, we do have a
microcosm.
lot of people from southern states who are very cool and very progressive.
Oh no, 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 no.
But
You
we're
and I have
not
had.
not
I mean,
attacking
we're
them.
not doing.
They're on the
Look,
same team as us. I'm in a Republican county.
what
Okay.
happens is, again, and this is my theory, and most of my theories don't hold water, but America is so diverse, even just geographically. There's a great book out now that says there's actually 11 Americas. We so, and there
Is
is.
it
I mean,
geographic, or is it something?
yeah, no, pretty much geographic. I'm using this ship. Like Minnesota and Nebraskans on this ship, and there are a lot. They have a certain feel, right? Versus, there's even differences between Tennessee, Kentucky, and West Virginia, and Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. So yeah, they're kind of they're not cross. Like, but if you do cities, you've got LA on one coast and the other coast. So it's a little bit more that way. It's where they're raised, it's the history, it's all this stuff. So it's hard to be united to begin with. But now, I think it's almost impossible. That's number one. So please, anybody out there, this is a plea from me. If you have a plan, even if you think nobody's going to listen to it, we need to get some things on the table because somebody might have the plan. I don't see it. I don't
Yeah,
have it.
especially Dave. Let's just talk for example. We cannot escape from talking about AI and its effect on all this because now we're at the point where
I know.
people are using AI to be their therapists, and so they're responding to something that's essentially a bot who's giving you a response based on all the information, and that's fine. But you have this emotional tie with something that is not even real. So we're
Well, you
moving
can't get
into
more of
a
it. Yeah.
position where the phones are already telling us, as soon as we type something in, what to type, and they're kind of getting it right. It's getting to that point where things are getting spooky, and it's a weird way to live.
And, well,
It's the way that we had seen in movies and films, and now it's hit us. And this is not a drama. This is a horror film, because when
Well,
it
I would
starts
agree.
thinking
First
for
of
us,
all,
and now we have a problem.
First of all, I would say, as I've always said, things are things and are not harmful or helpful within themselves. It's how you use them.
Right.
Okay, that's number one. Unfortunately, human beings, being human beings, we had a college professor who used to say, human nature being what it is, there's no goddamn human nature, and you go off. Well, I disagree with him. But anyway, here we have there will be people who have a tendency to use it badly. Now, let's put it in a perspective of something you and I know, but could relate to any job. All right. You've even said it. We have actually, ladies and gentlemen, had to cancel shows, or not cancel, but like we're doing tonight, because Brian, not for anything, has to do lesson plans,
I
and you
have to
have
do
to
it,
have
right.
a lesson
That
plan.
comes
You
first.
can't
My
you
students
can't
come
do
first.
it. I mean, they don't care about what you teach. They
I
never
don't.
have. They want to see, can you have the lesson plans? And it varies with time. Some people, like myself, I was a writer before I was a teacher. I could write great lesson plans. I never followed them, but I could write them. But it took me maybe 1/10 the time that it took some people to do. But it was still time away that I couldn't think about teaching. I just played with it, Brian. I haven't told you this. I did it last week. I wrote 180 lesson plans, 180 school days, 180 lesson plans using American literature at a high school level with the message, resounding message of being themes, and the overarching thing was empathy. And how do you get there? You know how long it took me? Would you like to hazard a guess? It would have taken me minimally a year's time to do that normally. Minimally.
Well, this is a save. That's the great thing about AI. It can save you time. The
Do you
problem
know how
is,
long
how
it
much
would
is it taking away from your thinking process, critical thinking process?
None.
There's no
I'll tell you in this
synthesis
sense.
going on.
Because
synthesize.
it does the drudge work, right? And then you alter it. You say, well, I don't really want to use Huckleberry. It took me, it was under 3 minutes to do. Now, that sounds good. I was telling Brian, that's all I'll say here. There's an experimental school which I'll be following. I live in Arlington. Next place over is Alexandria. They are opening there'll be 6 of them in the country. I don't know where the other 5 are going to be. They're a new school, a company is opening, so there'll be a private, not a public school. And it will be completely AI driven. There will be no teachers there. They're hiring what they're going to call guides. And the guides, which is interesting. Brian, do you make $100,000 a year?
No.
No. Very few teachers do. They're going to start their guides at $100,000. Now, but the difference is, now think about this, kids, friends, and family. It'll still be much cheaper because they'll be able to take, let's say, I know the beginning salary. I just happen to know this because a young lady is in Arlington. It's $57,000 a year. That's what you start at. Do you realize that if you paid that guide $100,000, right, one guide, you would save probably about $570,000 because it could do the work of 10 teachers. That doesn't mean it does it well. It does. I mean, I don't see it. So AI, if you know anybody working right now, if we think it's bad now, I'm afraid it's only going to get worse because we're going to, okay, if we can't, I'll do it this way. If we can't give deserving veterans help now, right? And we can't, how are we going to give 50 or 60% of Americans? How are we going to help them when they have no job because there's no job for them to have?
Right. Absolutely.
Now, I'm not saying keep what we have now because that's not going to happen. So, boy, was this a doom and gloom show. And there's a reason for that. Right now, ladies and gentlemen, we're in a doom and gloom time. There's no other
Right.
normal,
Because we're lying to
rational.
ourselves. You have to.
No,
The
now,
truth is what is. That's the only truth.
And
Or
so
as Bill Burr
what-
says, your record is what you are. Just
Correct.
accept it.
So what does that mean? It means a couple things. It means if we're upset about that, we have to do what is within our power individually to change that. Then on top of that, we have to join with groups because there is more power in groups of doing things. Third, my mantra here, and I'm getting more active every week in Washington, D.C. protest and resistance. I like this motto. It's not original with me, but I think it's also important. The motto that I kind of live by and try to teach others: resist, recharge, repeat, because that brings it all in. You got to resist, but you got to recharge because, it's like why you put, I guess it's kind of, the analogy is why you put your face mask on first in a plane. Because if you can't, you're not in any condition to help any others if you can't breathe, right?
Right.
And then of course, the repeat says it's not going to be easy. This is not we want, and we all are getting that way. We want instant gratification. We want instant results. We want
Right.
instant. We want instant oatmeal. We want instant.
That's why people don't want to
everything,
wait
right?
any more than 2 minutes at McDonald's, because they see people 5
Exactly.
people deep
Exactly.
getting going to
Well,
Burger King.
this. I mean, if you really stop back, we did not get into this. You know how long it took us to get here where we are today? 250 years minimally.
Right, but we're here.
Minimally, and it was before that. So we're not going to get out of it by next Tuesday. Having said that, Brian, again, you shall go first. And I've actually, it was described by a columnist I really, really admire. Last week was the week when hell got hotter than it has ever been in recent years. But having said that, are you more optimistic, less optimistic? Where do you stand this week as we close this show?
I'm certainly just as pessimistic about the future as I was last week. And just in general, and I don't like to poo-poo this because I've lived I can say more or less a wonderful life. And if I died today, I could say that I did well. But that's not a victory, because my victory, it means nothing if somebody else has to suffer. So
Right.
in the end, life is brutal. It's like kind of like what Woody Allen said. It's unbearable to think that you would delude yourself to try to avoid the tragedy of life. But if you do delude yourself, it does save you from reality, which is not great either. So either way you go with it, there has to be some type of you're going to be having some type of price. Life in general, even if you personally are living okay, and that's for now. We don't know. I mean, Dave, you've had a wonderful life, but you've gone through a lot of difficult health situations.
Absolutely. As all of us.
and
As
it's
all of
just
us have,
brutal.
yeah.
We all of us, and we don't know when that's going to come up. But we do know, no matter what, that for every time you're feeling good, the next person is paying the price. So don't raise that flag and put it, at the 50-yard line because you think you live well. You have to base it on the totality of living organisms, and it is a bloodbath. Evolution is a bloodbath. So no matter what happens in this situation, in general, let's not delude ourselves. Yes, you can have your individual days that you consider good. We have our pleasures, and they're wonderful, and you cannot deny them. But in the end, it's once you hit a certain age, you just try to limit the problems. But it's bad. It's really,
I'm
really
going to kind
bad.
of take my response tonight is kind of go back to where we were. If you ask me, am I more optimistic or less optimistic about America? I would say less, much less optimistic than last week because of the events that happened. However, having said that, I'm much more, and I'm nobody special. I'm just much more committed to trying to change it. And that's what I think. I mean, there are three kinds of people in these things. One, there are many, Brian, maybe as much as 40%, but definitely about a third of the country that are very happy with where the country is today, not tomorrow, because the economic pain hasn't hit yet.
Right.
But that they're fine. Okay. Then you've
They're
got
the freedom from people, not the freedom to
right.
people. Right.
And then you've got the third, which are the ones who would consider taking Donald Trump's life. Not that they would do it, but they're just convinced that he is one of the great Satans to bring down America. And then you've got this third of the people, and this is the one that I'm addressing here. You've said it, Brian. You said it very well. You can't sit this one out, folks. You can't sit it out.
At your peril,
because
you
it's
can, but you can't sit.
well, that's exactly it.
Right.
You are going to be affected by it, and you better damn well take a side. Now, let's look at this. Last night, I'll end on this. It was interesting. Last night, Brian Hyland, for those of you who don't know, Brian wrote the first song I actually think I paid attention to. I was 8 years old when it was released, and it was called Teeny Weeny, Itsy Bitsy Teeny Weeny Yellow Polka Dot Bikini. Brian has described it as one of the worst songs ever written. It just means he doesn't like women
I
in
didn't like
bikinis.
Henry
He's-
VIII. I am. I mean, I hated that one.
that's a very,
that
very
solo on that
a
song.
good
Don't
analogy
listen
song.
to it, or you'll just die.
But Brian Hyland was interesting. He did a song last night I never heard. I've never heard, but it was an anti-war song, right? Sung from the perspective of a Southern soldier. And my point of bringing it as the end of this is the Civil War was a war. It was a brutal, bloody war. It's sort of like the name Jesus Christ. Nobody can say the name Jesus Christ without having some kind of feeling about it, good, bad, or indifferent. Well, the same thing with the term Civil War. But ladies and gentlemen, we're in, if you want to joke about it, you can call it an uncivil war. If you just want to call it what it is a civil war. Right now, it is mostly words, but we saw in Minnesota where the family was slain. We saw with Charlie Kirk, it's also a war with bullets. And bullets don't discriminate. So let's not kid ourselves.
Right.
We're in a civil war. How it turns out, don't know, but we're in one.
All right. Dave, it's great seeing you again from Alaska there.
And if I don't freeze to death, I'll be back on the show. Let's see, where do I? Oh no, I'll actually be back in D.C. And as a kind of a what did I say? A hint to draw more people in. And I haven't had a chance to tell you this, Brian. Both Flare, which is the 24/7 resistance from Trump at Union Station in Washington D.C., and also the Lafayette Park Peace 24/7 Peace Vigil, which operates, and Trump did try to take down. That's for another show. Has agreed that we can broadcast a remote from there whenever we want. So
Excellent.
that would be kind of cool. That would be kind of cool to do it. We'll have to set up the technology. But anyway, people, have a good week. Don't be, let's just say, it's okay to be discouraged, but then figure out how you're going to handle and get yourself not out of that discouragement, but it may be protesting, it may be money, it may be reading, it may be reaching out simply to your grandchildren or your children, and they're hurting. There's many ways to do this, but you're in the war. I'm in the war. Brian's in the war. We're all in the war.
And Dave, just one little favor of you while you're in Alaska.
Yes.
If you would, I would just appreciate if you do see Lisa Murkowski, tell her I said go fuck herself.
I will. I also, the last time I was here, end on humor, I guess. Last time I was here, anybody who knows Judy and I know that Judy's the naturalist and I'm the city boy. But I like her vacations, because I would never do them. But this one time, I was just national forested out. And we were on a school bus, believe it or not, big yellow school bus. And I just said, you guys go, you're going to do a little walking exercise. I'm going to stay here. And I did on the bus. And I turned around at one point, Brian, and you know how high school buses are. I mean, they're up, the windows. Mm-hmm. And staring at me was a full-sized elk that took up the whole window. And I thought to myself, I hope these windows are relatively strong. So I'm going to try to avoid that elk. But if I see Lisa Murkowski, I will tell her hi for you.
That's great. Dave, thank you very much. And we'll be on next week.
And thank everyone who watched.
Right. I'll throw a little bit of AI here that I was playing around with. And